You've hit play on the Screen Companion, a show about making your viewing time count. We're tackling dark horse sequels that just didn't get much love upon release. We're going to talk about Alien 3, or Alien Cubed, from 1992, as well as Quantum of Solace from 2008. Starting with Quantum of Solace, that has MI6 point man James Bond hot on the heels of the organization that led to his lady love Vesper Lynd killing herself in the previous film Casino Royale. Teaming up with a Bolivian Secret Service agent also looking for revenge, Bond uncovers a plot to monopolize the country's water supply. But his chief, M, is concerned by his growing body count. Is he acting in service of Her Majesty, or is wrath his only quantum of solace? John, do you know what the word quantum means?
It's really small. It's tiny.
I had no idea what the hell a quantum was. I was like, are we going into science or something here? What is this?
It's time travel.
So I don't think the title helped it.
No, I don't think people knew. I think I had to look it up, even though I've taken science classes, which sounds generic.
Bond time traveling could be pretty cool.
I hope it never gets to that unless time travel's a real world thing.
I think we dodged a bullet during the Roger Moore era. After Moonraker, if that movie was better received, we might have gone to the past or the future with him.
Oh, jeez. just travel back and wonder why he looks like a Scottish man.
Well, what do you think typifies James Bond appeal for most fans?
There's like a fun formula to it of he's going to be Schwab, he's going to get a lady, he's going to have the gadgets. He's just going to be smug about it the whole time.
Is that what you get out of it?
For the most part, I do love the romanticized spy thriller of it all. How it's supposed to be romanticized.
Because you've seen them all, right?
Correct.
I've seen all the movies except for No Time to Die.
Oh.
Out of the official Eon series. And I like a few of them enough to rewatch every couple years, but I wouldn't call myself a fan of Bond. I happen to like 5 or 6 movies with him in it, but I don't go to it for him. So I feel like whatever issues the fandom has with Quantum of Solace, you're going to have to really bring me into that world.
Oh, no.
It's a lot of pressure, but I know you can do it.
Uh-oh. All right. I got this.
Since you have seen all the Craig movies and I haven't, how would you classify Daniel Craig's run compared to the broader franchise?
He's still a cold, hard killer at his core. Especially this movie, I think, really helps quantify it. It helps bring home why he would be that character. All the other movies, every time he murders someone, he's got a quip ready. That's a psychopath.
And with Quantum being a dark horse, what do you think makes it so, especially compared to Casino Royale?
Casino Royale was so good. And at the end of it, that last shot when he walks up and he shoots Mr. White and he hits it with the names Bond, James Bond, it's like, all right, we've been waiting the whole movie to see James Bond, and then this one, I don't think people were ready for a direct sequel. It literally starts, minutes, hours after the last one ended, with the car chase because he's got him in the trunk, which was very Bond, but then the editing was off. But I guess we'll get to that, right? But yeah, A, I don't think people were ready for a direct sequel, and B, we were ready for him to be James Bond, and now we're discovering that he's still on that journey.
The Americans are going to be none too pleased about this.
I promised them the chief, and they got the chief.
They got his body.
If they'd wanted his soul, they should have made a deal with a priest.
Has he said anything?
No.
You look like hell. When's the last time you slept? Vesper's boyfriend, Yusuf Kabira, the one who was abducted in Morocco, the one she was trying to save, His body was washed up on a beach in Ibiza. We're meant to believe the fish did that to his face. His wallet and ID were in his pocket.
Well, that's convenient.
Quite. Which is why I did a DNA check on a lock of his hair found in Vesper's apartment. It's not him.
A lock of his hair. I wouldn't have thought Vesper the sentimental type.
Well, we never really know anyone, do we? But I do need to know, Bond. I need to know that I can trust you.
And you don't?
Well, it'd be a pretty cold bastard who didn't want revenge for the death of someone he loved.
You don't have to worry about me. I'm not going to go chasing him. He's not important. And neither was she.
Is Quantum the very first direct sequel in the franchise?
The other ones make reference of things that may have happened in the past, but they're not direct sequels.
One of the reasons I think Diamonds Are Forever sucks is because it's up to the audience to believe that Bond wants revenge so badly because Tracy was killed in the previous movie. But does he even say her name once in Diamonds Are Forever?
No.
I don't think anybody ever says, you know, Bond, I understand why you gotta bug up your ass about Blofeld. I mean, he did kill your wife right after you guys had your wedding ceremony.
There's a few scenes where he seems even happy to see Blofeld, because I guess that's just on Sean Connery. I'm like, oh, Blofeld.
Connery loves the chase. Whether it's bedding women or killing men. And if he can do both, that's heaven.
Just like, all right.
That's why he wouldn't do On Her Majesty's Secret Service. The producers were like, Connery, we want you to get married in this one. What? No, I will sleep with her, but I will not marry. That's not fun.
Eroding the sanctity of sex.
Not my Bond.
Hashtag not my Bond.
Where does Quantum of Solace rank for you now that you've seen Craig complete his tenure?
In the Bond mythos or in Craig's tenure?
Craig's.
I don't know, because I did like the rest of them. It sounded like nobody else liked No Time to Die, which I really liked. I'm going to say it's tied for third with No Time to Die, and it's a very close race, except Spectre didn't get out of the gate.
And again, it might be because I'm not a traditional Bond fan, but as flawed as Quantum is, and it has many flaws in its diamond, it's my favorite Craig.
Ooh.
A few of the films get deeper into the character, but out of the rest, this one uses the cardboard cutout that is Bond to great effect in the most efficient manner, being the shortest movie in the canon.
Okay. I'll take that as a win.
A character like Bond, you mentioned it, he's suave, he likes expensive clothes, he has sex a lot. The movies don't want to look that much deeper for the most part. So when that constitutes your character, how do you justify a 2-hour, 40-minute romp? That character should be Action Man 100 minutes or less, in my opinion.
There's some story to be told. I don't know about this one, but there's some story to be told.
Why do you like Quantum more than maybe the average Bond fan's opinion of it?
The grittiness of it. I like the Bolivian agent, Camille, I believe her name was. She had a really good story going on. And just the direct sequelness of it. It felt more like the Bond-verse, opposed to just individual movies.
Become an active listener by joining the Screen Companion. Subscribe on YouTube, hit us up on X, and our Facebook group. Let us know your favorite episodes and what topics or films we should tackle next. Further support the host by buying his novel, Self-Recognition, a futuristic detective story, available on Amazon in print and digital formats. Now back to the show. Perhaps the continuity strangled some of Daniel Craig's possibilities?
Perhaps, but we've had nothing but non-continuity. Let's try something different. Let's go in a different direction.
For 5 movies?
Why not?
Do you think the continuity is part of the reason they had to kill him?
Maybe. I thought it was a good ending. You're moving on to a new actor, right? You're taking your time. Let it be just this fun Bond event.
I'm familiar with the plot of No Time to Die. Would you describe the last act of that movie as fun?
I would say maybe a little more intense.
I want to support your argument, but you got to give me more details. It's not quite matching.
Oh, wow. Okay, maybe not fun. We'll go the opposite direction. The other ones are fun. The other ones are Roger Moore always went in by himself against an army and saved the day and quipped his way out. Sean Connery banged his way out of every situation. Timothy Dalton was a cold, hard killer, but he only got 2. His movies were gritty as hell.
But he wasn't as dour as Craig. Like, if I think of any of the Bonds sitting alone in their apartment drinking, I would imagine Craig.
Yeah, and I think that's what they were going for. It's nice to see the writers also taking a different approach to the character without going too far out. They cut aspects of the character, like the humor, but they still kept this cold, hard killer. Maybe he doesn't want to be a cold, hard killer. Like I said, Roger Moore is murdering people, Sean Connery is murdering people, and they're making quips. That's a psychopath.
Did anything new jump out at you on this viewing of Quantum?
I hate to say it because I'm defending the movie, but I think a new complaint jumped out.
Oh, okay. We'll get to that then. But Camille, for me, is definitely in my top 5 Bond girls. But on this rewatch, I didn't realize how little screen time she gets.
The actress brings it and does such a good job here.
She's maybe in it a third of the movie.
She shows up, fails to get assassinated like any good spy, disappears for, I think, like the second act entirely.
Rarely are Bond girls strong enough to have whole sequences focused on them without Bond, but I want to see her do some sleuthing. Between the boat chase where she knocks her head and Bond leaves her, to when she comes back into the story at Dominic Green's fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, what's she up to?
She's also a Secret Service agent.
But actually, as far as POV shifts, can you think of many other Bond movies that shift to another character?
Besides the villain?
Yeah. Well, I guess if we're focusing on Bond girls, how about that?
Oh, okay. I want to say, I haven't seen it forever because it's my least favorite, and the internet's going to hate that because they don't understand movies. I want to say my least favorite is On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
Oh my god, that's a dagger in my heart.
Is it? That might not be one of your favorites.
You just threw an exploding watch gadget at my face. How dare you, sir?
That has a lot of scenes with his wife.
That's true. Oh, and GoldenEye.
The Russian hacker lady whose name escapes me, even though it's one of my favorites.
Natalia?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are whole scenes. Bond isn't in them with her. She's with Alan Cummings. Yeah, okay. But very few movies, if at all, that do that. And this was such a missed opportunity. Give me more Camille.
Agreed.
So before we get to your plethora of issues with this film that somehow aren't at the very bottom of your Craig list, what was your favorite moment in Quantum?
I always remember that scene when Craig is going toe-to-toe with 2 fighter airplanes in that old, crappy cargo plane. And he's pulling up, and he's trying to get it to do something awesome, and it just won't, and he loses his shit. He's like, come on! And he gets angry at the plane. And I feel like that's the first time in the entire franchise where Bond just, I guess, breaks. I don't know, that scene always jumps out to me.
That whole sequence, it does make me think of Living Daylights.
I was going to say that it's the desert part, but that's License to Kill, right?
The desert's in Living Daylights.
Yeah, at a 50-50.
That's true, and you still failed.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. You all right?
Fine. But I keep thinking, he's dead. Now what?
All the down we saw will have to come down. And there'll be others too. Someone who worked for Green might be of help.
Not a bad idea. Do you think they'll be able to sleep now?
I don't think the dead care about vengeance.
So often in these movies, there is little in the way of emotional repercussions for all the violence. And after Camille gets her revenge on the man who murdered her family, set the house on fire, she regresses and is huddled against the wall as history repeats itself and the room is burning around her. As brutish as I see Craig's Bond, I think he's the best at consoling women.
He absolutely is, and that scene is a great example of that. Skyfall, because he's not trying to have sex with M at any point. He's her emotional rock somehow.
Wait, did you say he's not trying to have sex with M?
Yeah, he might be. I don't know.
But John, it's definitely more like a mother-son relationship.
Yeah, it is. And I could see somewhere written down in one of the movie Bibles that Bond thinks M stands for mom.
Or mum.
Or mum.
Because they're British.
They're British. God, we're the worst. Well, I have the worst British accent.
This is probably why I get more French listeners than I do UK. But you got Camille in this scene, the Vesper crying in the shower a bit from Casino Royale, and then his support of Madeline and Spectre. He's a big ol' softy under that bulldog exterior.
He really is.
What are your two biggest issues with the film?
My biggest issue, I think, is Jason Bourne. Those movies were coming out and being their own thing, and then they tried to do this with the action sequences. The camera was too tight for all of it, and it was too shaky. Bond is like the inventor of the set-piece action sequence. Thinking about it during the final fight, it's this super cool exploding hotel, but you got shaky cam up close of a fist fight. You can't even really tell the hotel's blowing up.
And I had trouble during the boat chase because there's so much fast cutting and tight shots. When Camille gets knocked out, it took me a second to realize what happened to her, what hit her.
Mm-hmm.
And in such a frenetic scene, the moment you need a second to figure out what just happened, you've already fallen behind. Because they've already moved on to the next bit. It's like, whoa, let me catch up here. Like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah, in No Time to Die, there's a beautiful sequence of Bond fighting his way up from the bottom of a complex to the top, and it's a single shot. It should be more of that.
There's a misconception that the Bond movies are trendsetters. Perhaps early on that was true, but like we were talking about how Bond really apes what's going on during the time the movie comes out, Bourne was popular around 2008. And it's too bad it feels like these guys were chasing that instead of trying to do their own thing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
What's your second problem?
You talked about it earlier. It's the length. You're a big fan of the length. This movie has no time to breathe. You don't have time to be like, oh, that action sequence. Okay, let's relax for a minute. No, it just goes straight into the next action sequence. Bond can't go to the grocery store without getting jumped by 50 ninjas, it felt like.
Especially this watch, it really felt like it was speed walking through the plot, barreling through those action set pieces like they needed to make that release date.
Mm-hmm.
And out of all of Craig's movies, isn't this the shortest length between releases? 2 years?
It felt because it was a direct sequel. People didn't have the bandwidth to be like, what do you mean it's connected?
I can't think of a single moment that took place in Quantum where they took the time to gradually build up the suspense, can you?
No. It just straight to, ha! And then, yeah, like I said, you didn't get a breather after the action sequence either.
But I don't think it's a symptom of the shorter runtime. Compare this to the first Mission Impossible, which is only 10 minutes longer, but it has such a greater variety of action scenes, finds the places to let the plot breathe. How do you think the movie, and the reception to it, affected the next one, Skyfall?
They went out and got an Academy Award-winning director, and I think they took their time with the script. And then they screwed it up again because they kept the same director.
I don't know, they've used the same director on multiple Bond movies. That in and of itself I don't think is a killing blow. Or is that your opinion?
That might be my opinion.
No way.
No, I think that the two Dalton ones are pretty good, and they don't get enough love.
Although if you go from For Your Eyes Only to Octopussy, that almost makes you think, maybe it shouldn't have been the same guy twice.
Yeah.
But then we wouldn't have gotten A View to a Kill.
The one that caused Roger Moore to retire.
Well, then I'd say it was super successful.
Everybody wins.
Because he wanted to retire, I think, even as early as For Your Eyes Only. View to a Kill should have happened sooner.
View to a Kill would have been better with a darker tone. I love it, mostly because it takes place here in San Francisco. But I think a darker tone and Timothy Dalton would have made that movie probably better.
Oh, man. Totally. Yeah, it would have. Oh, Tim. He's my favorite Bond. I'll say it.
He's a pretty good Bond.
He could have given us so much more if there had been a third movie. So how do you see the current state of the 007 franchise? What do you want them to do next?
I would love if each movie had nothing to do with the next. Go grab like 4 or 5 auteurs and let them make their own movie with their own Bond and their own script, and it just have it be so completely different from each other.
As far as the reaction that was Skyfall to Quantum, I think they took the wrong lesson from it being the shortest movie, not only in his series, but in the entire Bond franchise. Like 100-minute long Spectre might have made that a better movie.
Maybe. Definitely cut out the bits where Blofeld is his evil stepbrother. That's so unbelievably dumb and cliche. You have the amazing Dave Bautista doing this awesome heavy lifting as the henchman, and then Waltz comes in and the director tells him he can't have emotions?
I haven't seen Spectre in a long time, but I think I will revisit it at some point. I can tell you right now, I'm going to start the movie after that terrible Sam Smith song. That whole opening bit down in Mexico, don't need it, screw it. And then that cuts off like a good 20 minutes.
The staple of the opening action sequence is when you realize Bond is going to pull it through, that's when the James Bond music starts, and they screw it up in Spectre somehow. I think it starts before it's visibly clear that he's going to survive the helicopter. We didn't even talk about the Bond song from Quantum of Solace.
Oh, do we need to?
You're not a fan? I happen to like it.
Do you like it overall, or do you like the music more than you like the vocals?
Perhaps
I'm leading you here, but...
Yeah, you definitely are leading me. I like it overall. I've seen interviews with Jack White. He's also a big Bond fan, and he was going for classic feel.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think he failed then.
Wow. I'll disagree, but there's probably a 99% chance you know more about music than I do.
Oh, no.
Oh, okay.
During the pandemic, I started playing an electric keyboard. And unfortunately, 90% of the songs I learned, I have since forgotten.
Oh, nice.
Music is not my art form, so it's a real uphill climb for me to play anything.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
Yeah, so don't come to me for music suggestions. I don't know. I think any 10-second clip of that Jack White song is cool. Him doing a duet with Alicia Keys, really, that worked for you?
It's like the whole movie. It was different enough, right? But it still stood out.
I'll give it to you there as being indicative of the larger film. That's true. It is very different as a piece of music in the Bond franchise, and I guess it does pair well with a very different movie that sticks out.
And it was definitely overshadowed by Adele in the next one. That Skyfall song is one of my favorite songs of all time in general.
But I've been thinking about this, what would make me come back to Bond? Because right now, I gotta say, my interest level is 0. I've always had a problem with Bond sleeping with every chick in the room. Sometimes it makes him look callous, other times unprofessional. But I think that's intrinsic to the character's on-screen persona. They reduced his womanizing in the last few Craigs, but that's the wrong direction. Don't nerf the character's promiscuity. Instead, I want a better explanation for it and all the expensive clothes he wears. I want the next one to be a hard reset where Bond is set up as an undercover in the world of fashion. Maybe he's a modeling agent or the financier of some top designers. That allows him to travel around the world for his spy stuff and makes it less jarring for him to be a man whore. I want him in a scene comparing ties with the villain, comparing shoes, business cards, moving closer to Patrick Bateman.
I was just going to say.
Out of the 24 entries that I've watched, I never got a good sense of why Bond is a secret agent. And Craig's version always seems like he wants to quit in every movie. He's got one foot out the door. But if he's clearly unhinged and surrounded by glamour pussy, I'll stop questioning it.
Because I read that Nolan wanted to set his in the 60s. Does yours take place in modern day?
It could. I wouldn't mind a 60s version. But I feel like if you put it in the 60s, it's almost like you're saying he can't exist in modern times and modern politics. If it's going to be in the 60s, because it's purely a stylistic choice, not because they think he's problematic and that's why they're trying to justify his behavior. Which is why, in my version, I think it does justify his behavior and makes the character suited to the world he could be in if it was fashion or some other trendy industry where it's all about glitz and how you look and who you're effing. To me, that's what Bond excels at. Does that angle not work for you?
No, I think that works. That would work really well. I mean, you're kind of being radical having him be an actual spy, but yeah, let's go for it.
I find it so irksome how many of the Bond movies seem to treat Bond as a celebrity in the spy world, which to me, that's the quickest way to get a bullet to the head. It's like, you can't go anywhere because everybody knows who you are. So if he was in a high-profile position, almost like a Bruce Wayne type, I would hope it would force him to do more stuff behind the scenes, under the cover of darkness, not gallivanting in broad daylight with high-octane action scenes where people can take out their phones and take pictures of this dude and be like, who is this guy? Oh, that's James Bond, international hotshot spy.
The super spy.
Use that cinematography brain of yours. You have all the bright, highly saturated scenes with the fashion photography, the parties, daylight. Juxtapose that with Bond behind the curtain, snooping around, being creepy in the dark.
Killing a guy and then having to go straight onto stage and introducing a dress.
Yeah, do a fashion walk. That's exactly what I was just thinking, John. You read my mind. Do you see the potential now?
It's there. It's there. You wouldn't be the first friend of mine that had said, let's write a Bond script with, and then we barely get past the first act before we fizzle out.
I can't even get you to read my Mission Impossible script, John. So there's no chance of us collaborating on a Bond script.
I read the opening scene.
Thanks, man. Are you including the cover page?
Yes, I am.
What's more appealing when you hear the synopsis for a sequel? When most or all the original cast comes back, or when it's only one or two of them? Hint, hint, with what we're going to talk about next.
I gotta say, it's most of the original cast coming back. Going back to Spider-Man, it's nice to see all the characters continuing their stories.
And I think it sets it apart from other movies because you have that collection of characters, those actors. You make something special by doing that. I hate to always bring it back to Star Trek, but it shows that as long as there's a compelling story, the number of times a character is on screen or how old they get doesn't matter, man.
No.
William Shatner played Kirk in TV and film across 4 decades. Compared to original series Kirk, Wrath of Khan Kirk wasn't a strapping buck, but the depth they gave him across those 6 movies was tremendous.
Oh, yeah. Look, getting old is also a real thing that any character is going to have to deal with.
But which genre do you think does sequels the best? Action, horror, or sci-fi?
Sci-fi, probably, yeah.
If I'm coming at it from a quality standpoint, I think there are more examples of good sci-fi sequels. But if we talk about genres that support sequelization, it's a toss-up between action and horror. You can just pump them out.
Yeah, there's a million Freddy and Jason movies. Aliens, depending on how you want to look at it, that's all 3 at some point.
True, but if we look at the baseline of what genre they're a part of, I think action and horror, because they're more spectacle, you can make a bunch of them, but the quality just won't be there in the way that sci-fi is dealing with bigger themes, and it's not any individual going to light speed thing that people are just like, oh, I love it. But the second half of our show is Alien 3. Space trucker Ellen Ripley crashes onto Fury 161, a desolate planet with one maximum security prison factory, inhabited by less than 30 inmates and staff. The lifers have found religion, but their spiritual leader, Dylan, and the warden, Andrews, both see Ripley as a threat to their tenuous tranquility. She finds a friend in the doctor, no, not Christopher Eccleston, although he'd have been great in the role, named Clemens. But quickly, things go sideways. When people start dying because of those pesky xenomorphs Ripley has been plagued by on 2 previous adventures. In another fight to the death with an acid-blooded alien, the clock is ticking as the dreaded megacorp Weyland-Yutani is on its way to grab a specimen for its nefarious schemes. John, what aspects of the Alien franchise do you think have made it successful, and are they the same reasons you like it?
It feels like there's a definite set of rules for the Alien itself.
Really?
Yeah, which later franchises did not follow.
I'm jumping ahead a little, but since you mentioned the supposed clear rules, let me argue one point with you that is, I think, especially evidenced in Alien 3. Do you think the xenomorphs, are they killers or are they feeders? You know what I mean?
I think they are ants. And without a queen telling them what to do, they're just going to consume. They're going to eat. They're feeders.
It's not really consistent, though, in Alien 3. There are scenes where the alien kills like 5 dudes in a row. Well, the alien's obviously not doing it specifically because it's hungry.
A lot of it was protecting the queen, which was in Ellen.
In one scene that's overt, but I have a hard time believing toward the end there where it's killing a bunch of dudes at once, that it's doing it because it thinks she's in trouble. Because you got Dylan at one point seemingly menacing her because they're doing it as a ruse to get the alien where they want it.
Yeah.
But besides that one moment in that sequence, when it's chasing all these other dudes around and killing people left and right like a ninja, I can buy it either way, but be consistent. Either it wants to kill everybody no matter what, or it's just an animal that's killing to eat.
In the greater scheme of things, it doesn't seem like they have resource management.
What else do you think makes it a successful franchise?
Also the mystery to it. According to you, there may or may not be rules, but we don't know those rules. And I don't think there's going to be a definitive answer. And there's enough of mystery to keep the fear part of your brain engaged. I have no idea what's going on with this thing.
I definitely see a consistency, if not in the rules necessarily, but the accoutrements. If it's an alien movie, you're going to see eggs. You're going to see face huggers. You're going to see the life cycle start with the face hugger and end with an alien or a queen, maybe. So at least that seems to have been really consistent across all the movies.
Yeah. Plus, the design of it is just so iconic at this point.
Would you say you are a fan of the franchise?
Absolutely.
So something like Alien Romulus, when that comes out, you're going to give it a shot?
Yeah, I am.
Full disclosure, just like with Bond, why does the host pick these movies when he seems to crap on a lot of stuff? Well, it's just more fun and more interesting to crap than just love everything. But I'm not a big proponent of the franchise. I think it's so damn played out. I wish it would go away. But the time for it to have a graceful exit has long since passed.
They're just rehashing the same old concept when there's so much they could do with it.
I liked the basic idea of Prometheus, but the moment you put the alien skin on it, to me it's knocked it down a few measures. It would have been so much better as its own property.
It was bluntly straightforward when it was trying to be this mystery.
Sigourney Weaver, I think even now, with some sequels beyond her movies, I would argue she's still the star of the franchise, besides the Xenomorphs. Who do you think Ellen Ripley is, and why do you think she's so popular?
She's one of the first very well-written female protagonists. And she definitely stood the test of time. There's no dumbness to her. And this happens with all characters. Eventually they do something dumb, whereas she definitely shows signs of getting smarter over the movies. Especially this one. Look, I know more about this thing than you guys do. Maybe listen to me.
Her being a really smartly written character, let's try to focus that more, because you and I have done movies on this show. We did an episode about Ingrid Bergman. There are instances of smart female characters before Alien. So do you mean more like in horror movies or sci-fi movies?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Because she's not the very first.
No, she's not the first, but she's so well-written and well-acted. Like Ingrid Bergman. Does stand the test of time. She's still here.
And the first Alien was what, 78, 79?
I want to say 79.
If I think of a few of the prototypical slashers that were coming out, I might even argue Jamie Lee Curtis. She was cool in Halloween. I wouldn't really categorize her as a strong character, would you?
No, because I think that's the difference between victim, a well-acted victim, and a well-acted, I don't want to say aggressor, but solver. Let's say solver.
Jamie Lee Curtis runs away a lot in that movie, doesn't she?
Yeah, whereas Ellen Ripley, especially this one, she's actively trying to solve a problem. Multiple problems, really.
Ooh, in an alternate universe, and it would be interesting to see who was up for Ripley, but Jamie Lee Curtis could have been a good Ripley.
Agreed. She's also a very good actress.
I know I asked you why Ripley is so popular. From my perspective, I have to go in the opposite direction and say the franchise was capped by focusing on her for 4 straight movies. I just don't see much of a character there. I don't see a coherent arc or anything she does that couldn't have been replicated through a new character. That's not to say I think Ripley is terrible, but Aliens was the culmination of her journey. Like, what questions were there left about her after that movie? Was it, oh, I want to see her teach Newt to become a badass like Sarah Connor in Terminator 2? I don't think so.
2 was a PTSD movie for her and her overcoming that, and then 3 was her just being like, God, these things again. As all the marketing material very clearly stated, the bitch was back. She's just over it.
This whole movie is dour as hell. She just wants to end it. It's like I was living vicariously through her. Yeah, you're right, Ripley. I'm so tired of these goddamn aliens. Let's just end it.
Let's think of these motherfucking aliens on this motherfucking plane.
No. These mother effers in this foundry.
Yeah, that's right, because swearing was against God, and that was my bad.
Oh, but you could have had Dylan. Charles Dutton. You could have had him do the Samuel L. Jackson lines.
Easily. He's so good at it. He's got such a presence.
Oh, yeah, he does. But what do you think makes Alien 3 a dark horse, especially compared to Aliens?
The script isn't quite there, but that cast is just so present on the screen at all times.
We're all gonna die. The only question is when. This is as good a place as any. The only question is how you check out. Do you want it on your feet? Or on your fucking knees? Begging. I ain't much for begging. Nobody ever gave me nothing. So I say, fuck that thing. Let's fight it.
Every line Dylan says is just this amazing, booming, theatrical monologue. Dr. Clemens, Charles Dance, again, he's present, he's there. Everybody's on screen at all times. Paul McGann. I don't know if you remember Paul McGann was in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
We did have a doctor.
I knew it. You know, I had a little bit of a bingo card going into this as to the references you'd make.
Oh, okay.
Gotta hand it to you, I might be calling it early, but the fact that you mentioned Charles Dance without mentioning Game of Thrones, that's a lot of restraint you showed, but then you let me down with Paul McGann.
Oh, come on.
You just wanted me to know how smart you are.
Yes. Even one of the rapists, which is such a bad way, Holt McCallany. McCallany? I'm probably not saying that right. He was in it for half a second.
And Mindhunters. He's been in a lot of Fincher stuff.
Yeah. Mindhunter. Yeah. Fincher directing the movie. Has this franchise ever had a non-award-winning director?
Well, what are we going to consider the franchise? We're going to include the Alien vs. Predator stuff, too?
No.
But Alien 3, it's stripped down compared to the first two, and I wonder how much of that affected audience's reaction to it, because Ripley doesn't have her toys to play with, no mech suit, no flamethrower, the fancy spaceship is gone. It's Tony Stark without his suit in Iron Man 3. It's Dutch at the end of Predator smearing mud on his face using wooden spears. I don't think it's as obvious as those movies, but Ripley has to use her wits in a way we haven't seen before. And in the case of the franchise up to that point, the retro tech and gadgets were what audiences were used to. The cold interiors, all the little computer displays and beep-bop-boop lights.
Yeah.
Visually, the third movie is so opposite of those others.
Color palette-wise, like the first two are basically black and white to such extremes, and then this one is like, there's almost like a tint of like red throw-up.
It's a hellscape.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of religious stuff happening in the imagery and the characters themselves. That made me appreciate this movie more. And I'm curious if maybe you thought of this too. So, the inmates there, they're contrite, they're religious, and I saw the extended cut, which is almost 2.5 hours long. Some of the stuff I'm referencing I don't think was in the theatrical version that you saw. There's more material where they're talking about their beliefs. They never get super specific about what type of religion it is. Is it a new religion? Is it based on Christianity? They're waiting for the end times. There's going to be a resurrection. And then, John, what happens in the fourth movie?
Do you mean the movie entitled Resurrection?
Yeah. It's almost like it was foreshadowing the fourth movie. You know, he or she has risen again.
Maybe.
That just blew my mind. I was like, wow, I like this a lot more now. It's like he was right, you know, it wasn't totally BS. He foresaw what was going to happen in the fourth one, and yeah, you're going to die in this one, but you're going to come back in the next one, Ripley. Count on it.
In the theatrical cut, there was definitely references to not a resurrection, but God's immortality or something like that.
Resurrection, we should treat the Ripley in that one as a totally different being and totally not this Ripley. What do you think?
No, it should not be the same Ripley. When a character sacrifices themselves and they get to survive it, that just feels so empty.
That was a part I didn't like in the extended version. When she falls into the foundry, that moment almost plays real time. She just goes for a hot bath and that's the end.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the queen doesn't even burst out of her chest.
In the theatrical, the queen definitely burst out, and it's an amazing little puppet.
That's where I think the theatrical version did it better, because it was slow-mo. It's like the series was building to that moment where she killed the queen, and now she's going to do it again. You little bitch, you're not getting away.
Mm-mm.
And it was also cool to see a character who has largely gone through these movies unscathed. But to see that, yeah, it finally got her. It impregnated her.
Yeah.
What do you think of the fact that everybody had shaved heads?
That was a weird stylistic choice, but it definitely helped the movie stand out.
It might have helped the movie stand out, but with all those great actors, I was having trouble telling them apart.
Really was just a series of British white guys with shaved heads.
And their clothes isn't very distinct, so it's really hard to tell who's who. And a few times, especially toward the end, people were dying, and was it that guy? Who died? I guess I'll know when they congregate at some point, and I'll be like, oh, okay, these are the remaining people.
That's who's left.
Where does the film rank now that you've seen most, if not all, of the sequels of the last couple decades? Have you seen them all?
Yeah, I've seen them all.
Oh, okay, there you go. You got quite a diet for these movies. Where does Alien 3 rank?
I want to say the first two are possibly interchangeable, because the second one's really good, don't get me wrong, but maybe it started top and just kept getting a little bit worse each time.
I used to be a big fan of Aliens, and it could just be me entering a crotchety phase of life. But the last time I saw Aliens was a couple years ago, and I was done with it after that viewing. And I think part of my feelings on it are colored by James Cameron's later movies and really seeing the games he plays with the audience. But I'm going to liken Aliens to a bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. It knows what you want, it tastes good, but if anybody were to ask me, is that a complicated bowl of cereal you're eating? Does it have a ton of inventiveness, and is it really creative? It's totally fine, it tastes great, but there's an emptiness to it as well that I noticed this last watch. And so at the same time that my appreciation for that had gone down, Alien 3 has gone up because it is so different. It's not the best movie. It's so different in ways that I think a lot of sequels in these horror franchises don't even attempt anymore. They just don't care to do it. And knowing something about the troubled production of this movie, that Fincher was able to get as much new stuff as he was able to with how terrible the producers sounded on this movie is a triumph.
I read that he had to fight for everything. Did you ever hear that famous James Cameron pitch for when he was pitching the Alien sequel?
No, what was it?
I guess he just had the word alien on the board, and then he wrote an S at the end and turned it to a $sign, and that was the whole pitch.
Oh, I thought you meant for a possible third movie.
Oh, no.
I had heard that for the second one, so that just proves my point. Yeah, I mean, that's why he's so damn successful, but it's also why I hate him. I get Hicks and Newt are beloved, but this belief that a third one with those guys would have been superior to what we got, I'm not so sure. Because of the troubled production behind Alien 3, all the drama. I watched some documentary stuff leading up to this. It seems like the producers really didn't care if Hicks and Newt were in it or if it was Ripley on her own. And with that kind of apathy, I'm glad they were killed off screen.
They definitely deserved so much better.
If they were included, what do you imagine the story could have been?
There's a lot, I think, to explore, because they're all murderers and rapists. Bringing a woman into that environment proved difficult enough, but then you bring in a child and a military meathead would add so much.
Who was injured? He wasn't at his best.
Yeah, he wasn't at his best. He was definitely slightly crispy. You add those two into the equation, and that just adds so much more drama to the situation. Is the xenomorph even the biggest problem anymore?
Oh my god, don't go in that Romero direction.
Ah, come on.
It's not the monster that's the problem, it's us. I mean, I don't disagree with you, but that's old hat.
Yeah, yeah, whatever.
Just thinking about it now, if they brought back Hicks and Newt, another problem I have with these movies is how Weyland-Yutani is just such a monolithic, possibly evil corporation. So if you're going to bring Hicks back, I wouldn't mind seeing a resistance to this mega corporation. I would just like to see another company that they're fighting with. Why is it always Weyland-Yutani? Answer, because they're not creative, damn it.
I don't want to admit this. So I've read a bunch of the fan fiction books too. Official releases, but in those books, the Weyland-Yutani does get their hands on the alien, and they're using, like, gorillas as the drones to make. And every time, something always goes wrong, and so every single nest that they've created, they lose control of and have to send in the Marines.
We're supposed to side with Ripley when she's sounding the alarm and telling everybody at the prison, look, we can't let the company get their hands on the alien. It's going to be Armageddon. We're going to Armageddon on if they get their hands on it. But what do we really know about the company? She just assumes that you can't control it. It's almost like an allegory for getting your hands on the nuke and how many people were double agents for the other side because they truly believed nobody should have this technology. The United States can't even be trusted with it. That's all like theoretical. What has the company actually done in these first three movies that shows us they're evil?
In Aliens, right? They knew it was down there when they set up the colony. And that was, the whole point was to see how the experiment went. But then why send in the Marines, I guess?
I'm not a huge fan of Aliens, so I don't give it much space in my brain anymore. Let me try biting the apple from a different angle. I get drama-wise, it makes sense to us that, oh yeah, if they get a hold of the alien, in future sequels, it's going to be them losing control. That makes sense. That would be the eventuality. But does it have to be that way? Couldn't a sequel be they get their hands on it and then they use it for the purposes, the military purposes that they wanted to, that it's not specifically, it gets out of control, it doesn't turn into Resident Evil where cities are infected. And the reason why I want to throw Weyland-Yutani a bone, let me try to lead you down this road and see if you go with me.
Uh-oh.
Take my hand, John.
Covered in Cheeto dust.
And yet you still grabbed it. Stop licking it.
Cheetos are delicious.
So the very end, Weyland-Yutani gets to the prison. You've got a guy who may or may not be another android like Bishop. He says he's the real deal. He's a scientist. Yeah, he lies to her at first. But you could chalk that up to it being a big scientific discovery. He'll say anything to her to get it. But do you think, if she went with them, do you think they would have let her live?
They might have tried, but if push comes to shove, That alien is priority.
Oh yeah, I agree with you there. A sign that they're not cold-hearted killers that are totally singular in their goal. You have the one inmate that survives at the very end, and they lead him away. And it's like, why even keep him alive? If you're this evil corporation, why would you want a single witness?
It's a good point. Ripley was very clear that they were going to murder them all just for seeing it. Then that guy gets medical treatment at the end. And the first person to get off was a surgeon.
So they set up the prison planet. It had been a fully functioning facility, and then they were going to shut it down. A small group, a sect of them, wanted to stay behind. And the company was okay with it. And did you catch that they said they resupplied them every 6 months?
Mm-hmm.
I get the company is born out of this mistrust of big corporations, especially in the 80s. But what percentage is there for them to continue the existence of this seemingly distant facility, resupplying them every 6 months? Why would they let them do that?
If the company had it, it's a prison for hire to begin with, right?
I would assume so.
At this point, it's no longer a correctional facility. Maybe the turnaround has generated something in profit. I guess it's free labor from the criminals? I don't know. Maybe someone's got a soft spot.
But it doesn't really look like... Do they ever say if they export anything?
No. No, because the only thing it does, that furnace hadn't been fired up in, 5 or 6 years, was the quote?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Are we becoming Weyland-Yutani apologists?
Well, I'm not going to go so far as to say that this should prove that nobody in control at the company, nobody on the board is evil. But I would just say it pokes a few holes in Ripley's perspective on the company.
I read somewhere that the original pitch for Alien 3 was that their religion was anti-technology, so everything was wood.
And they lived on a satellite that was completely made of wood.
You cannot live in space on wood and be anti-technology. You will suffocate. See your god.
They had windmills in this wooden sphere that makes you go, how does the atmosphere not leak out?
It's going to be a lot of wood to create gravity, right?
Now that sounds like a French movie.
Oh, sacre bleu.
Yeah, I could imagine one of them out on the balcony looking at space. You mentioned Aliens was Ripley dealing with PTSD, am I right?
Yes.
Between Aliens and Alien 3, I'd say she's much more PTSD-y in the third movie.
Yeah, I think so.
She's just given up.
I remember watching the movie with my oldest brother, and the second that it starts, he was really taking in the irony of she went through all that just for the kid to die anyway.
What's your favorite moment in Alien 3?
Anytime Charles S. Dutton is talking.
And I guess it was Sigourney Weaver being a co-producer on the movie. She lobbied hard for Dutton to get that role.
He was so good.
My favorite moment is the Bishop scene, because as pitiful as he is, and he's just so mangled at this point, he's really just a face and a hand, how businesslike it is, and it makes her look almost even more dead inside and uncaring. Like, if this was Hicks she was talking to, don't you think she would have shown more emotion?
Yeah.
Or you would hope she would. But instead, she's just like, I need to know if there's an alien here, Bishop. Is there? Yes.
They put it on from the get-go.
And then how quickly, once she's got her answers, why do they just disconnect them?
Ripley.
My Bishop.
How are you feeling?
My legs hurt.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm just a glorified toaster. How are you? Oh, America.
Bishop, can you access data on the flight recorder?
No problem. I'm home.
What happened on the Sulaco? Why were our cryotubes ejected?
Stasis interrupted. Fire in cryogenic compartment. Repeat. Fire in
What happened?
cryogenic.
What started the fire, Bishop?
The fire was electrical.
Sensors pick up anything moving around on the ship prior to separation?
It's very dark here, Ripley. I'm not what I used to be.
Just tell me. Does the recorder indicate anything? Was there an alien on board?
Yes.
Does the company know?
The company knows everything that happened on the ship. It all goes into the computer and gets sent back to network.
And they want it.
I heard. Do me a favor. Disconnect me. I could be reworked, but I'll never be top of the line again. I'd rather be nothing.
That's such a weird choice. It's like, hey, if I can't be the best, I don't want to be anything.
And she doesn't give it a second thought. She's like, okay, and just disconnects him.
Oh, yeah. Well, you were one of the good ones. Yeah, that's how her android racism goes.
Oh, I didn't think of that. Yeah, that's probably part of it, too.
Just straight up, nah, you're not one of the good ones anymore. Goodbye.
So, what's your biggest problem with the film, besides Hicks and Newt not being in it?
The Xenomorph is also kind of barely in it. I think it's in this less than it was in the first one, and I think the first one it had very little screen time. Because there was so much to explore, because it was clearly different. It came from a dog, so it almost acted like a dog, but they didn't explore that.
The version I saw, instead of a dog, it was an ox. Extended version, I don't think it really meant anything either, which is why I guess they could just replace it with a dog.
I did not know that it was an ox in the extended version.
Yeah, although that would explain... How big was it in the version you saw?
It ranged, too. That's another complaint. The size of it ranged, because there's the beautiful scene of her and it, like, face-to-face, and it does the mouth-tug thing. It looked so small, and in other scenes it was towering over people.
Might be because they were using footage from both versions.
Possibly.
I've heard they only had 40 pages of the script locked when they started shooting.
That's a terrible idea.
I can see why Fincher says it's like the most terrible directing experience he's ever gone through.
That was his first one, too, and he stuck with it.
And I heard that they chose him specifically because he was a new director and had gone through so much development that they just wanted a director that would do what they told him to do.
Oh, he's a visionary director.
I would side with Fincher, especially after that beautiful moment you just mentioned of the alien being face-to-face with Ripley. I've heard a couple sources say that the producers were against that. They were adamant that that shot was terrible. Don't do it.
I've heard that too, and it's the most iconic shot in all the movies.
It's been parodied a couple times.
Yeah.
Once your movie gets parodied, that's how you know those are the moments that stick with people.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously, why would anybody want to parody something that nobody remembers? So Ripley and everyone else, they're discovering the alien is hunting them, but the audience already knows. It's an hour of watching them catching up to us, which in the first movie, that's all right. But in the third movie, Ripley, why aren't you immediately saying it's xenomorphs? It's not your first rodeo. As much as I like the scene with Bishop, I almost don't want her to do the detective work. It's clear what it is. Huh, what are these acid marks? It's an alien.
Almost would have been better to go that route with her character and have it not be an alien.
Considering the movie is called Alien, it could be a different alien.
Maybe she's like, this is a xenomorph, it's got acid, and like, she gives everyone the lowdown and they're prepared, and then boom, it's something else. Maybe it's the Predator.
This is where they could have gone into Halloween 3 territory. Just take the concept. It's called Alien. So really at the heart of this thing, it's about something alien to humanity. Have Stan Winston do a totally new creature design.
Something that isn't explicitly based off a penis. Intentionally based off a penis.
All the detective work that Ripley does for the first half of the movie, it's just for her edification, right?
Yeah.
It's not like she brings those facts to the warden. They just don't believe her most of it until finally a bunch of people get offed.
It has to attack someone in light of day in the middle of the mess hall for anyone to actually believe her, even though people keep dying.
And try to remember to the first time you saw this movie. When Charles Dance gets killed, were you shocked?
Yeah, because I expected him to be Michael Biehn replacement, honestly.
At the time, I was shocked. Subsequent viewings, if you know anything about storytelling, it's like, oh, right, he's had a secret the whole movie, and then he finally tells her the secret.
Yeah, he gets it off his chest, and then boom.
He gets it off his chest so that the alien can remove his chest.
You can't reveal your secrets, you can't talk about loved ones back home, and you can't talk about upcoming retirements, otherwise you're done.
You can't have any catharsis. You can't have any development. It's almost like movies are telling us, be the same person all the time. Never grow. Never tell anybody your feelings, because that's when you're going to get killed.
Become a sad curmudgeon constantly so that you can live.
You've reached the end of this episode of The Screen Companion. Thank you for listening.